It's really important that you know what you're getting yourself into if you're going to be buying a house instead of renting. If you get a normal mortgage today, you pay it faithfully for 5 years, you'll have handed the bank around $145,000. And out of that amount, only $27,000 actually went toward your house. The rest of what you were paying was interest. So I thought it'd be important to clear up some of the lies and the misdirection given by people regarding renting versus owning, because you're going to hear a lot of people on financial YouTube talking about renting versus owning houses, and I think there's some things that they tend to get wrong. The immediate thing they go to is that renting is throwing away money and buying builds you wealth. What I propose is that that can be true, but it is not necessarily true. Now, I don't want to give you the idea that I'm in any way against buying a home. I think it's really important that we as a generation buy up a lot of the homes, so these corporations don't, but there's a right way to do it. So the argument people make that renting is just throwing away money is not a great argument. There's way more to it than that. It's not that black and white. It is true that when you are paying rent, it is not going toward your mortgage because you don't have a mortgage. So that money is not going to you owning the house. That is true. But the things you are avoiding are property taxes, repairs, insurance. You're avoiding closing costs, agent fees. And when you do buy a house, you do not have nearly as much flexibility. Once you buy something that's a couple $100,000, you're pretty locked down if you're living in that house. Now, there's something to be said for having flexibility when you're younger, because you could need to pivot careers or change the place that you're living in. These things become a lot more difficult if you are living in a house that you own and is not very liquid. So what's really important here is that you do not rush the purchase of a home or do it as your first approach to living on your own. That is something to consider down the line when you are pretty established already, because it could be one of the most expensive mistakes you ever make if you buy a house and then regret it. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people's families will very much pressure them to buy a house or really get their life started, so to speak, by purchasing a home. You just need to block out the noise from those people when it comes to your financial decisions, because that is not a good idea to just rush into something like that. This isn't the 50s anymore. You can't buy a house with, a couple $1,000 or $10,000. It's just not realistic anymore. I don't think I need to explain what the housing costs are compared to income these days, but the ratio is disgusting. So here's the part that nobody on YouTube really talks about much. And honestly, I think it's very important. Instead of living in the first property you get, you should consider an investment property. That way, when you're living below your means in some place you're renting at, you can actually start accumulating wealth using real estate and still get the benefits of owning a home, like appreciation. And on top of that, the rental income. Now, I think it's better to own multiple units, but if you want to buy a single family home, those can be a good investment as well. But the motto here is rent where you live and buy what pays you. There is the alternative, which is the house hacking thing where you buy, a couple units, live in one of them. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So that's another approach you can keep in mind, buying something like a quadruplex, triplex, living in one of the units, renting out the other two. But you do have to be very careful to get a good deal on those. There are actual restrictions on that where you have to be making enough rental income for the units you're purchasing if you're living in one of them. So if you decide to go that route, just do your research. So renting is not a failure. It is something you should do until you have enough investments running in the background, enough income, and enough money in general to really make that commitment to a house purchase. It is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll make in your life, and it should not be taken lightly. So kill any guilt you might have about renting and thug it out for a little bit. That's all I gotta say on that. Subscribe for more.